Well, hello everyone and welcome back to 48 Now. I'm digital host AJ Wiest, and the 21st annual Liz Hurley Ribbon Run is coming to downtown Huntsville October 19th. Today I am joined with the one and only Liz Hurley. Liz, how are you doing today?
AJ, I couldn't be better. I could not be better. I've had a phenomenal morning. You know, you never know when you get up in the morning how your day is going to unfold. And I had a lovely, lovely morning. I was out getting ready for the Veterans Day Parade, so I was out at SAIC. Had a lovely encounter with a security guard. How often does that happen? It's usually like when they see somebody in the media, it's like, okay, what are you here for? What are you doing? What do you have in your purse? Blah, blah. I had such a transformational meeting. This security guard named Audrey came up. I thought she was just going to give me the biggest bear hug. And she goes, Are you? And I said, hi, I'm Liz. And she said, oh, honey, I have prayed for you for a long, long time, and it is so great to meet you. And I said, well, Audrey, it is so great to meet you too. She goes, my church prayed for you. And every night I watch you on TV, and I just am astounded at how good you're doing, how well you're doing. And I said, it's your prayers, Audrey, and everyone else here in the Tennessee Valley and beyond, and the great doctors we have here. And I'll give shout outs to mine to Dr. Marshall Schroeder, who was in charge of my care, who I really owe that survivorship to. The good Lord, these friends, and all the people who are out there praying. So it's a good day. It's a good day when you hear wonderful things out there.
Yes, ma'am.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well today.
Great.
Just came into work on a Tuesday, and I'm interviewing the one and only Liz Hurley, so
it's just me.
Cannot get better than that.
Just me. What do you want to know about me?
What
do you want to know about everything?
Yes. So this 5K and Survivors Walk, it's been going on obviously for 21 years now. Mm-hmm. And you started the Breast Cancer Fund at Huntsville Hospital back in 1999. That was the year after you were diagnosed with breast cancer. Could you share a little bit first about just your battle with cancer and what led you to establishing the fund here in Huntsville?
Well, I could go way back, and I may in a few minutes, but when I was diagnosed in 1998, it was very difficult then in Huntsville to get a diagnosis in one place before you got a complete picture of your health. You couldn't go here to get, meet with a physician and have them run a battery of tests. You had to go here for this, here for that, here for that, here for that. There was no central location. There was no breast center that would help with your diagnostics and then help navigate you through this system if you were diagnosed with breast cancer. And I say if because the goal, of course, is to not have a diagnosis of any kind.
Right.
But if one is diagnosed with cancer, at least there's someone there or an entity there that can help guide you through the system. So when I was diagnosed, there was no breast health center in the city of Huntsville. It took me 2 weeks, maybe a little longer, to find out how advanced my breast cancer was, as opposed to now where through the breast center and through local surgeons all working together, a woman can find out in a couple of days. So she can make certain determinations about her course of treatment. Breast cancer is not necessarily an emergency, but it is something that you need to have the information on before you can act on it. Now, in some cases, it is more urgent than others. If you were like me, you're young, and you have a very aggressive breast cancer that is growing multiplicatively, and they can test for that now, then you do need to get on it as fast as possible. Most breast cancers are slow growing, but with my type, which is called triple negative breast cancer, nothing positive about triple negative breast cancer. Don't read up on it because it'll scare the wits out of you. But, that does elevate the urgency a little bit on what you need to be doing, who you need to see. And so by establishing this fund, I said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do with this money, but we need to establish a fund, the Liz Hurley Breast Cancer Fund. It came about actually because during my treatment, between my chemotherapy, my surgeries, I was asked to go speak to different groups. So naturally, I said yes. Now, many times I couldn't drive because I had had surgery and I just wasn't feeling myself. I had no hair, but I wanted to go tell my story because I wanted to empower other women to take charge of their health. So I would go speak, and then people would hand me money. And I would say, I don't need your money, thank you. They said, no, it's not for you. Do something with this money. And I said, okay. So it got to the point where my husband Dave said, you've got to do something with all of this money you keep collecting. You've got a pile of checks here. You've got cash. What are you going to do with that? And so that's when I went to Huntsville Hospital Foundation and proposed opening a fund. And I said, I don't know what we need to do with it exactly, but let's start the fund. I'm going to funnel money in whenever I go speak, and we will figure out what we need to do. And in no short time, it was very clear what we needed, and that was a breast health center for the city of Huntsville, which has now evolved from the Huntsville Hospital Breast Center to the Madison Hospital Breast Center, 2 freestanding breast centers in Huntsville combined now make up the largest breast health center in the state of Alabama, as well as the busiest breast health center in the state of Alabama. So in 26 years, we've gone from nothing to brick and mortar to a huge breast health center where thousands and thousands of women go every year. 200 a week will go through the doors there at the Huntsville Hospital Breast Center. And they will have their mammograms, and the majority do not have breast cancer, but some do. And by golly, the ones who do are so grateful because they have the best technology and the best physicians who are looking after them and then navigating them through our Nurse Navigator program, guiding these women who are pretty shell-shocked when they find out they have breast cancer, walking them through the process. So that's how the fund and therefore this kind of the genesis of it. But then it became very apparent that this equipment is really costly. The mammographies, the breast MRIs, the CAD machines, the ultrasounds, the software. Oh my gosh. You know, we live in a journalist world. Technology costs big bucks. And so it became very apparent that just having a breast cancer fund was not going to be the catalyst to purchasing these high dollar pieces of equipment. So we needed a vehicle by which to raise a lot of money. So guess what? That's when the Liz Hurley Ribbon Run became the premier event to fund this equipment, because every year, you think you go to the grocery store and the prices go up. Oh my gosh, going shopping for technology, it's quite costly. This year we are going to, with the funds from the 2024 Ribbon Run, that will go to purchased software upgrades to the 3D mammography machines that we have. We don't need the hardware. The hardware is there for these 3 machines at Huntsville Hospital. But we need to upgrade the software, which will make it more specific and assist doctors in finding and locating a breast cancer at a more earlier and curable stage.
Wow. That is truly incredible work you're doing. And I know over the years, over $7 million have been raised for breast cancer awareness. Like, when you hear that number, $7 million, like, how does that make you feel?
I don't even know how to really write that out. I mean, there's a whole lot of zeros behind that.
Right.
But I think it is a testament to not only the cause, but also because people know that if they walk or run in this race, that all that money stays right here. It's all local. Yeah. It's an investment in their future, or a coworker's future, or a friend at church, their mother, their sister, their daughter. So I think they know that it's such a transparent fund that the $7 million is it's directly invested in this equipment, and then they see the blessings that come out of this fund, because there are some. We have other programs that are funded by the Liz Hurley Breast Cancer Fund. We have a patient assistance fund for women who don't qualify under the Alabama Breast and Cervical Cancer Program. They have to meet certain income guidelines. They don't think they can get a mammogram. They're 40 or 50. They know they need one, but they can't afford it. So under the Alabama ABC program, they can qualify to have mammograms done, and should they have breast cancer, it's taken care of through the state. But this Breast Cancer Assistance Fund, if a woman is diagnosed, for instance, I spoke to a woman recently, and we had her on air. She has she's gainfully employed, but she hasn't used up any of her deductible this year. She's been healthy as a horse. Then all of a sudden she's diagnosed with breast cancer toward the latter part of the year. She has a high deductible. She forks out $7,500. And then she has to turn around 2 months later at the beginning of the year and pay the other part of her deductible now that she's going through treatment. So suddenly she's faced with, where am I going to find $15,000 quickly? How can I do that and pay my mortgage and do this, that, and the other? So there is a patient assistance fund for women who qualify under that fund who may need just a little something extra to get by. So that is an arm of the fund. And then there's also the Surviving and Thriving program. I kind of call it breast cancer boot camp, if you will. You know, it's a 6 weeks program that women come in and they'll have gone through their treatment, gone through whatever they've gone through, radiation, surgery, the whole 9 yards, and then they come out and they go, now what? What do I do? And so that Surviving and Thriving program, I like to say, gives them that kick in the tail to say, you know what? You're going to have to find out the new you and what you want to do, but there is life after breast cancer. I say there is a BC and an AD. There is a before cancer and an after diagnosis. You look through the rear view mirror constantly when you're going through treatment, but then there comes a time where you have to look through the dashboard. There's a great big future out there. What do you want your future to look like? So we try to empower these women, healthy ways, diet, exercise, mental health, art, all sorts of courses, if you will, to empower them, to get them moving toward the future. So not only are we on the front end at the diagnosis end, empowering them, getting the equipment needed to diagnose women, but also following them through their course of treatment with nurse navigators, and then hopefully coming out the other side. Again, the goal is to not be diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
As I said, just last year, 65,000 patients went through Huntsville Hospital's breast center. 65,000 people just last year.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking more than 1 million over the last 20. And so many of them walked out with a clean bill of health. But for the ones who didn't, there was something there for them. There were people there to hold their hands, to talk to them, talk them off the ledge in many cases, and then, and get them through. And I think they're grateful that this fund is there, and they are grateful, that people are there who've experienced it and who can help them through. There was no one there for me.
Right.
And so I knew I was in a position, if I made it through, that I could help other women. And that is my goal, to help other women, get through this and make it a little bit easier.
Yes, ma'am. You're doing that very well. But Liz, I want to ask, when you first learned of your diagnosis, what exactly was running through your mind at that time?
Oh my gosh, I was so young. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer.
35, I believe?
No, she passed away when she was 35.
35.
Yeah, she was 30 when she was diagnosed. She had just delivered my baby brother and could not breastfeed, and that's when they found that it wasn't just a clogged milk duct, which happens oftentimes in pregnancy, that she had breast cancer. And so at that point, she had breast cancer, and she was a guinea pig in many instances, and they threw the book at her. But back then, they did surgery first. Always cut it out, always cut it out. But that did not work. They did a single mastectomy with her and then gave her chemotherapy and radiation, and she lived 5 years. So my dad was left with 3 small children. So when I was diagnosed, of course, visions of my youth came flushing back. I had 2 small children. Olivia was 4. My son Jordan was 8. And I thought, oh my gosh, this can't be happening. But it is. But we will get through this. And I have a phenomenal support system. Great, great husband who used to be a TV news anchor, investigative reporter. So he just put on the blinders and went to the research work, started researching, as did my brothers, trying to figure out what I needed to do that was different from my mom and what course of treatment I needed. I knew it would not be what my mom had, even though that was what was still popular. That was still the way they did it back then. Even in the late 1990s, they were still treating women like they did back in the 1960s and 70s. And I said, something's got to give.
Right.
And I was very grateful that when I heard and got affirmation that my idea of doing chemotherapy before surgery, it was not traditional. It was not popular at all then. It wasn't the traditional course of treatment. Doctors just didn't do it. And it was being studied because it made sense. It certainly made sense to me. It was being studied, but it wasn't one of those, oh, okay, you have triple negative breast cancer, so this is what we will do. So I went and had various meetings with different oncologists and oncologist group, and then it came down to what was I going to do. And I said, survivorship has got to be the way. And so I had a frank conversation. Well, my oncologist had a frank conversation with me and he said, I think this is going to work. I think your idea makes good walking around sense. It's just not done. It's not traditional, but you got to promise me we'll do this. But if things start going south, then we'll go back to the old way.
Right.
So I agreed to that. And it was such a blessing that I said, we have got to do things differently. And so the great thing was, after 3 months, the cancer was really difficult to find on mammography. So it was a proof of performance, if you will. Give the chemotherapy first, see if it shrinks the tumor. And the tumor shrunk down to where it was almost negligible, which was miraculous to me.
Yeah.
So then that was a great sign to everybody. Okay, this is working. So I attribute the survivorship to out-of-the-box thinking a lot. And now when someone has triple-negative breast cancer, now in Huntsville, the line of course pretty much is, you need to have your chemo first. You'll have your surgery, but let's just kind of reverse it a little bit. Let's make sure the chemo we're using, eradicates as much of this cancer as possible. Because as it was explained to me, the only thing that's equivalent to a really rapidly growing cancer would be chemotherapy. Surgery is a local solution.
Right.
And with this type of aggressive cancer, it can grow so quickly and go so far, so fast, that you really can only hit it with a systemic treatment like a chemotherapy. Did I explain that well enough?
Yes, I would say you're definitely a trailblazer.
No, it is wonderful to see women now who are living a lot longer and healthier after a breast cancer diagnosis, especially after a triple negative breast cancer diagnosis. The odds back then were not good. Looking at the internet, looking at research, it was, it just wasn't a positive thing. But heck, now
the chances
Yeah,
are.
chances are growing.
Right.
Yes.
So
yes.
back then, it was always like surgery first
that
option
was very
or
traditional.
radiation.
It depends on if you have
kinda-
lymph node involvement. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Growing up, my mom, she's a cancer survivor. She
Is
had,
she?
yeah, she had a Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Mm-hmm.
I saw her growing up go through chemo, radiation, but she would always tell me, she's like, hope and faith is everything.
It is.
Always keep the hope. And can you talk a little bit
Well,
about
first,
that?
I want to ask you, I'm going to interrupt. I'm
Yes,
going to play
ma'am.
reporter for a minute. How is your mom doing now?
She's doing well. So she was diagnosed when I was 11.
Okay.
She battled for 11 years. I was, I believe, 21, 22 when she finally, she got the news that she had beat her cancer.
They
But-
gave her the good stamp of approval. You're good to go.
Yes, ma'am. She did.
I love that.
She
I love that.
she went through chemo first. That did not work. The cancer just kind of would always come
Laughed,
back.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Had radiation. I think white blood cell transplant.
Mm-hmm.
She went through everything. It seemed like, and we were beginning to lose hope that she was gonna beat the cancer. And then one day when I was out in college, she was like, she heard from the doctor, and she's like, I beat cancer. And
What was it? What was it? A chemotherapy regime? Was it a radiation or a combination?
I believe that was around the time she had just kind of like just stopped doing treatments for a little while, and it just kind of just went away. I'll actually have to get you in contact with her.
Wow, that's miraculous. That sounds like a miraculous recovery there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
It was, and Hodgkin's lymphoma is usually, I don't know all the science behind it, but usually that's one of the easiest like cancers to cure. And my mom battled it for 11 years.
And she was in her 20s when she was diagnosed?
No, she was in her 40s.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. That's a great story. So it goes to show you everyone has a story.
Yes,
Everyone
ma'am.
has a story to tell, and everyone seems to be touched by some form of cancer.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, the odds, they say 1 in every 2 people or 2 of every 3 people will be diagnosed, or someone in the family will. So many people are touched by a form of cancer. And now, you're more vigilant and more sensitive, probably, as a human being when it comes to hearing someone has a cancer diagnosis, because you know what it was like to be a son, to watch his
Yes,
mother
ma'am.
go through that, which is very traumatic, not knowing, how is this story going to end? How is mom going to be okay? Or, is mom going to have to struggle for a really long time?
Right.
So,
Most of the time, I didn't even realize like she was sick because she would fake it. She would very much fake it. Like she would still be there for my ball practices, my ball games, have dinner for my family. A lot of times growing up, I'm like, oh, my mom does have cancer. That was kind of not really the first thing on my mind, I guess.
she loved you, and she was doing everything she
absolutely.
could.
Yes,
she must
ma'am.
have a type A personality.
I believe she does. Yes, ma'am.
And she might share my blood type, which is B positive,
Right.
You got to get out there, and
That's
you got to,
right.
there's a lot of living to do, It's better, of course, to be 6 feet above ground than,
That's right. Yes,
to be
ma'am.
able to do what we can do. And I think that'll make you a more sensitive journalist, too.
I believe so
you know,
too.
and telling stories. That's why I wanted to tell my story.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd been asking people for years their stories, so it was only right if I told my story, and I did. I had someone document my chemotherapy, my surgeries, everything for a couple of years.
Yes,
And I think it helped other people. They've told me it helped them, seeing that someone can survive this. And it's rough, but you can come out on the other side.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
All
good.
I see you brought in a photo of your mother.
I did. I did. How about that? Yes, my mom.
Yes.
There's my
Talk
mom.
about your mom for a
My
bit.
mom was from Alabama. I'm a South Floridian, but my mom was born and raised in Mobile. Her dad was a preacher, and who's a minister, and so she ended up also being a fashion model. Can you tell? A little bit, and so that's what she not only was a model for some famous folk, but she also was, back in the 1950s, she was a what they called stewardess for Delta Airlines. So she was what we call flight attendants today. And that's where she met my dad, who was an airline captain for Delta Airlines. So, they had what they thought was a charmed life, married, started having kids, and had 3 kids. And then breast cancer came along and took her from us. And then that is that story. So I was a little girl when she passed away, but hopefully continue to carry on that torch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and that something I think is really important. We talk about family history. I asked you about your cancer. I talked about mine. I think now that we're coming up on the holidays, I should have brought a swig of water. Coming up on the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, when we have so many people around us, I always go out and I impart on people. When you sit down at the table, find out how everybody is. Just don't make all the small talk. Hi, how you doing? Go out and ask questions. Put on your reporter hat. Always wear a reporter's hat. This is what I found one year on my grandmother's chest of drawers. Can you see that? This is really old. This.
The 1880s,
Yeah,
you said.
this is 1880s, it may be 1890s, I'm not quite sure. But this is my grandfather's dad. This is his mother. So that would make her my great-great-grandmother, right? So she was born and raised in Greenville, Alabama. Her name was Alabama. Like I said, I was kind of blown away by that. She did not live to see 40. She passed away. I actually pulled up her death certificate. Once we had the internet and all that, I said, okay, I'm going to find out a little bit more about her. So it was clear she died in her 30s of breast cancer. And then my great-grandfather had a daughter who died of breast cancer. And it was random, but it was information that I didn't have any knowledge of, except for saying, Graham, who is this picture that you keep on your chest of drawers? Is it somebody in Granddad's family? Who is this? And that's when she told me the story. And so sometimes it takes, if you're visiting a relative's house, start asking about the family photos on the wall. Who are they? Are they still alive? How did they pass away? Sit at the dinner table and start saying, how's everybody doing? Everybody got their checkups? Everything going okay? And sometimes you might learn something, that someone has had a health crisis. It may not be cancer, but it may be something that you need to noodle on and you need to know for the future. It might be a heart issue. It might be a blood issue. It might be something that will be important to your health. And I always encourage people to share, even if it just stays at the family table. Just share that information so someone else can learn from it. Years ago, people didn't talk about breast cancer. They didn't talk about cancer in general. That was just something that you kept in the house, close the door. It was just something very silent. And thank goodness now we're pretty open about talking about all types of cancer, male cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. People are open now, and I'm glad they are, because they're encouraging other people to get thee to your test and your diagnostics.
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of family, I recently read an article about you and the Ribbon Run. It was from about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And the article mentions a cookbook that came from your grandmother. And inside the book, it was such a sweet note. It said, "Sweet Liz, don't always follow the recipe." Can you speak on that cookbook a bit?
Oh my gosh. Well, my grandmother was a preacher's wife. She was a prolific cook. She didn't need to have a cookbook, but I think she wrote a cookbook. I think I just remember she was always cooking and made the best meals. And gosh, and she taught me to cook. She taught my daughter to cook. And Yeah. Sweet Liz. Don't always follow the recipe. I guess that would be probably a good way to think about that in life. You know, always think out of the box. You can color outside the lines. You can challenge a little bit, but know that it's going to be okay. And I think probably that applies in this case because I didn't follow a recipe.
That's right.
I didn't follow that when it came to breast cancer. I don't follow that when it comes to cooking either. It's always a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit more of that, you know? So I think I learned that lesson early on of, you know, follow the recipe to a certain extent, listen to others who have a lot more experience, but ask if you can kind of modify the recipe a little bit. And I think by doing that personally, for going the route that I took, I think I'm alive today because of that. I think clear heads came together and we talked about the pros and the cons. And believe me, that recipe was out there. Here was the traditional recipe. Here's the recipe you want to do. And like everything else in life, you know, you get out a piece of paper, plus, minus, pros, cons. And I had the list going of the pros and the cons. And I had to make a decision one day. And that decision, after consulting with a doctor and making a pack and promising that we would go a traditional route and follow the recipe if things didn't start working out. But I think that I'd like to think that I'm alive today because of that, and hopefully making a difference for other women who will follow in my footsteps.
I love that so much. Don't follow the recipe.
She lived to be almost 100.
Wow.
And she didn't always follow the recipe. So I think about that. Hats off, Graham. Listen to your grandmother.
Absolutely. That's some great advice.
Yeah, yeah.
Moving on to the Survivor's Walk and, of course, the race itself. Speak a little about where the proceeds, you've already touched on it a little bit, but where they go towards.
Proceeds this year will go to purchase 3 software packages, if you will, to upgrade the 3D mammography machines. Each of those software packages cost $190,000 a pop. Goes into each machine. So you multiply that, what is that, almost $600,000 needed just to upgrade those machines to make them the best they can possibly be for our high-tech community that truly demands it. I mean, this, they know, they put in that sweat equity. They're going to run or walk in that race. They're going to donate that money to register, and that sweat equity, that investment with, you know, hopefully probably 6,500 people at least, all of that money is just funneled directly into that fund that will go and make that purchase to upgrade that equipment. So that's really the goal every year, is to do that. And then on the side, we continue to raise money to fund that patient assistance fund to help women who, you know, get in a pickle and kind of can't make that month's rent or mortgage payment or whatever they may need, just a little help at that point in time. And the Surviving and Thriving program, you know. So men too get breast cancer. So men walk through that door and men are diagnosed with breast cancer. So I'm trying to be very careful not to say just women. The majority of the time it is women, but there are men who are diagnosed as well. And those traditionally have a family history, you know, someone in their family directly, a first degree relative oftentimes has that. Or they were in some kind of profession that exposed them, you know? So those are, you know, those are different ways that we typically hear of men doing that. And as far as women, 10% have a family history, but the other 90% never saw it coming.
Right.
Majority of women do not have a family history. That's why it's so important for them to be getting their annual mammograms and to be checking themselves frequently in the shower or wherever, just to make sure everything is as it should be, which is really, really critical out there. They really need to pay attention to their bodies. Yeah, I think so many people just don't know it's coming.
Right.
And I said, you know what, I had it in my family, so I was always vigilant. But most people just put things off.
Right.
And That's not what you need to do. Everyone wants that woman or that man to survive and thrive.
That's right.
And it's a lot easier if you know what you're dealing with than waiting and going to the doctor and letting something nag at you. And that goes with anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I always say get a colonoscopy when you're supposed to at the right age. If you have a family history, get in there early. For instance, with breast cancer. If you have a first-degree relative who's been diagnosed, you need to get your mammogram 10 years before that person was diagnosed. If they were 50 when they diagnosed and you're a first-degree relative, a sister or a daughter, you go when you're 30. You know, if they were 60, you go at 50. Maybe you should be going at 50 anyway, but you know, that kind of thing. Just stay up to date. We're in this technology field here.
Yeah.
You know, Google it, find out. Here I am. Here's the algorithm. Put it in AI. I am this. My blank was diagnosed with this. What do I need to do? Or talk to a medical professional.
There's always hope out there.
There's always hope. There's somebody who can give you some good advice.
What is it about like a walk or a race that just brings people together for such a good cause?
Oh, what is it? I think they know, in this case, I think they know the end result. I think they know, I think it's very transparent. They know they're literally, the start of the race is on the same block as the breast center. So they see it all in pink. So they know where their money goes. I think in this day and age, transparency is so important. You know, when you send money off to a mystery fund, you just never know how it's used. And I think that's why it's so successful. I think people gather together for a common cause because they know it's the right thing to do. And I think it's just something positive. I think there's so much negativity, especially nowadays, that this is a great way to get families together, to get kids doing something positive for a good cause.
Yes.
Helping their mom, their grandmother, or their teacher, somebody at their church, synagogue, whatever it may be. I think they just know it's a great day in October to spend some time walking around. And it's a beautiful, beautiful world we live in case you haven't been out lately. You know, and October in downtown Huntsville is stunning. You know, the sugar maples are changing. People are getting ready for the holidays. There's a chill in the air. It's a beautiful walk through downtown. You get to see your neighbors. We're going to have bands like we did last year on the corners, at certain corners down there. So there'll be music playing, people cheering you on. It's just something positive in what can tend to be a very negative world. So that's what I think they like to do, put in a little sweat equity. And they know it's an investment in their future. It's an insurance policy right down the street.
But throughout the years of putting this event on, what has been some of the things that has brought you the most joy? Like maybe you've talked to someone at a past event who just really touched you.
Oh gosh, I cannot tell you how many thousands of people have touched me.
Right.
From the time I was diagnosed, I started to get mail. In fact, the folks at the station here at 48 would drop boxes off at my house for people from churches, from schools, people who were wishing me well and praying for me. Look at this. This, AJ, is just one of the boxes that I kept. Look at this. These are notes from different people. These are notes from teachers at one school, from a teacher who asked her students if they wanted to have a little project. So they all wrote me get well cards, and they drew on these get well cards. This one is from Jackie. I really hope, R-E-L-L-Y, as a mom, I would just say, oh, it's so precious. Just, you know, learning how to spell the big words. You know, I really hope you get well fast. I love you. You know, those precious little notes, they really kept me going. And so I have a lot of these that one day I will figure out what to do with. Maybe write a book, put them in there. I don't know. But it's those little things and those moments where you can connect. The grocery store is always great. You know, you'll be going down an aisle, and one day, one day at Publix in, where was this? At Twickenham. I was at the Twickenham downtown, and this woman stopped in the vegetable area, and she just kept staring at me. So finally I said, "Hi, how are you?" And she just looked at me and didn't say anything. And then she said, "You don't remember me?" And I said, "No, I don't. I'm so sorry." "You are." And she said, "I was the nurse in the operating room after you were diagnosed with breast cancer."
Wow.
I went, "Oh, you're kidding." She said, "I took care of you. You don't remember, and that's okay. No one does." You know, I'm just there, but I wanted you to know I was there, and I prayed for you, and I took care of you. I went, "Oh, bless your heart." So that was so meaningful. You just never know who you're going to meet when you're out there, especially if you make yourself open to that. So that was pretty cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool. So you just meet people. You just open yourself up, and it happens. It happens. All good. Great stories out there. I can't tell you how many people I've met. I can't tell you how many people who have influenced me or who say that I have influenced them. But it's been mutually beneficial, believe me, all the way around. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
It's great. You know what I'm talking about. You just never know someone's going to be helping you or just have a sweet word to say. You know?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They've all been great.
Last year, over 6,000 people participated in the 5K.
Wait. How many?
6,000.
More than that.
It was more than 6,000?
It was. But that's
was
okay.
Was it 7,000?
I don't know. One year it was 7,000.
Okay.
But it became, at that point, kind of a safety issue. You know, you think about it. You don't want to overtax emergency services. You've got Huntsville Police, who were so gracious. HEMC, so gracious. And you're like, okay, 7,000, that's a whole lot of people, because those 7,000 walkers or runners, they usually bring one or two people with them.
Yeah.
So if there can be 25,000 people, that's a whole lot of people down there.
Yeah.
That's like, remember John Hunt Park. It's John Hunt Park kind of status. So you don't want it to be dangerous. You want it to be a fun, safe event. So I don't know how many people. Right now we're pushing 6,000 as far as people who've signed up. So if you want to walk or run in the Liz Hurley Ribbon Run this year, you better get your name on the registration soon.
Do it now.
We are filling up. We are filling up. I don't want to put a cap on what that number would be, but I know we're going to get close very soon in the next week. Clearly, I know in the next week. So got to get going on that. Yeah.
What is the planning process like for doing a 5K like that? Like, how early do you have to start planning?
Like the race is on October 19th.
Yes,
it will
ma'am.
be Monday morning on the 21st. October 21st for next year.
Year
The Huntsville
round.
Track Club, year round. The Huntsville Track Club is absolutely phenomenal. And they physically, organize the race, what is necessary, getting all the accoutrements that go up for the race, having it out there. And then the Huntsville Hospital Foundation goes all out in managing the race. The park will be filled with supporters and sponsors. So if people come and they're milling around, they'll be able to meet all sorts of people. We just have so many sponsors who want to be out there, and you'll be able to talk to people. And you can go look at the list of sponsors. And it's just really, it's kind of cool to see who is out there supporting this effort. We can't eradicate breast cancer. That we will leave up to the people at CCI and at Hudson Alpha. But at least if we can catch it early enough, it gives women and some men a fighting chance. So they believe in that. And so it just takes a year to get it, because you want it to be a top-notch event. So the Huntsville Hospital Foundation, as well as the Huntsville Track Club, and others, volunteers. If people want to volunteer, next week, for instance, at Fleet Feet, we're going to be giving out the package pickup. So when somebody has their bib, it has their number on it, and I'm running for, and then the T-shirts. So when you think about 6,500 to 7,000 people, that's a whole lot to organize.
Right.
So we always need volunteers who can put it all together and be able to pass it out to different people. And we have to categorize it because different runners, different ages, you know, male, female, children, if they win, you know, they get a medal. So we need to know how many people are in there and what the age categories are. So it takes a drill down. It takes a lot of people getting it all organized. So I always have hats off to the Huntsville Track Club and to the Huntsville Hospital Foundation. With it, and it's through the foundation that my fund sits. So my fund rests at the Huntsville Hospital Foundation.
Yes. Yeah.
So as a nonprofit.
Can you speak about some of the sponsors for the event as well?
Well, next Friday, CFD Research is having the huge golf tournament. And I mean, it is huge and it is a big money maker. So we're going to have that at the Links at Redstone Arsenal. So CFD Research, there are a lot of third party, and I say third party, different people outside me and outside the foundation who want to put on events, and then they just write a check, which is great because there are not a whole lot of us and we have jobs.
Right.
So this golf tournament is a huge fundraiser every single year. So it's the Friday before, so it's going to be next week. So if you play golf, get on the CFD Research website and look for the golf tournament. It is a fun day out there at the Links. I love to go out there. It's beautiful, and I get to meet so many people. So it's just kind of fun. So those are events. So different people do different events throughout the year, and then they just write a check, and we put it in the fund, and it just all goes to this great cause. You know?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Finally, Liz, all those people you talked about, the thousands of people you've met. And for anyone out there battling cancer who come to you for advice or for some words, what do you typically tell them?
There is hope. There is hope. There is always hope. And I always instill that in them. I always somehow get around to the question of, are you a person of faith? And I think that is very helpful, you know, for a lot of people there. I tell them there'll always be someone there for them when they feel alone. I tell them the worst part is always at night. The darkest times are truly at night. What else do I tell them? They can always call if they get too down, and they know that. And I tell them to form, one of the most important things is to form a team with your physicians. You may have one, you may have 5. Form a team with them because it's really a team effort. You're not in this alone. They want you to succeed and you want them to succeed. So you have to have a really good relationship with them. You have to be a patient who does follow the recipe they give you. They want you to be what they say compliant. So you need to, you know, to do those things, and they will do their part, you do your part. And I think that's really important. You don't want to just be out there on your own. You want to know that, you know, there's accountability on both parts. And again, never give up hope, because there is hope out there. There is hope out there. They haven't found a cure yet. They are coming close to a vaccine, but you know, it will happen. Hopefully in my lifetime. They're making phenomenal inroads, and a lot of it is at Hudson Alpha Institute for Biotechnology, right out in Research Park. They are doing so many amazing things out there. All you have to do is go online and look up HAIB, and it'll pop up and you can see the cancer research that they're doing out there. And also they have for men and for women in a 5-county area in North Alabama, you can take a genetic test to find out if you are at risk for many cancers. So I always encourage people to go on to Hudson Alpha and find that web link, because you can get that genetic test to know if you are at risk, and it will help you determine what you need to know in the future. So very important. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and the more you know, the more power you have to conquer what will hit your path, whether it be disease or whatever. But when it comes to a diagnosis, what can be a deadly diagnosis, you try to absorb everything you possibly can, talk to as many people as you can with whom you trust, good information, trustful information, correct information. Go to those sources. Have your questions. A newly diagnosed, I know I'm going off script here, but for newly diagnosed patients, I always encourage them to get a notebook together, because I believe that organization when it comes to a diagnosis is key. And I always say this will be your second Bible. Take it with you. Get a notebook together and get, go ahead and put dividers, pocket dividers in there. Diagnosis, your pathology report, chemotherapy, surgery, all those things. And they can go in there and they get so much paperwork or so much information. Put in a notebook and a pen so you can take notes and ask questions. I always encourage them to ask questions and take someone with them who can listen for them. Because oftentimes, if you hear cancer, you don't hear anything else.
Oh.
You just shut down.
Yeah.
And you might ask a question, but you don't hear the answer. So it takes having someone else there who can make copious notes, who can remind you of what was said and your next steps. I think it's not just one person who's diagnosed, as you know, in your family.
Yep.
It's you, it's the whole family who's impacted. And so if you can have another person in there who can help think for you, imperative. It's always, always important to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Liz, that's all the questions I have for you.
Are you sure?
But of course, if you would like to add something,
the
feel
Liz Hurley
free.
Ribbon Run is
Yes.
October 19th.
19th.
Absolutely. Yep. Bright and early on that Saturday morning. We will kick it off with the Survivors Walk, which is very emotional. You'll see a lot of people out there. You might even see some people in wheelchairs but they're going to be in that Survivors Walk. And if they walk the whole 5K, to see them finish that race, truly it is finishing the race.
Yes.
They've been through their treatments, and the minute they touch that tone at the end of the race, they put it behind them. You can see it on their face. I've been through all this, and now I have finished the race. It's amazing to witness. It really, really is. Mm-hmm. So I encourage everybody. We'll have free parking. The city of Huntsville is kind enough to open up all the parking garages. So find those, pick a place to park, get down there early. We're going to kick it off bright and early. I always say get lined up by 7:30 in the morning, and we'll have you out there later on that morning. And it's just a great time. It is just such a positive event. It really is a positive event. So I encourage everybody to come out there and cheer everybody on, throw on your pink, come out there with some shakers, and just say hi to everyone. It's just a good time to get out with your neighbors and say, how you doing? Can I help you? You did a good job. I'm here to support you. Yay, yay.
Yes. Bring the whole community out.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Bring the whole community out and do that. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You make a difference. Every person makes a difference. If they're the person
right.
on the other end of the phone who's answering a question about cancer or a health concern, or if they're just somebody who's a runner who has no affiliation with someone with cancer, they're all helping in some small way. And all together, we make a big, big difference.
It's incredible. Well,
Nah, it's not incredible. It's just a blessing.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
blessed me as much as it has other people, believe me. Every day that I'm here is a blessing. Yeah.
Well,
Thank
Liz,
you.
Thank you so much. I could talk all afternoon.
You
but
could.
I know
Me too, but I've
you
got a
got to get
newscast
to
to
work
do in a
pretty
minute.
soon. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. Thank you for asking.